Okay, so that's tadzik. Does somebody have fingernails?
I'm sorry. Let me put it back in.
Alright. Awesome, thank you. Good. I'm going to start right away because I know some people are in a hurry, sort of. So, hi, I'm Tadzik. I'm going to talk about steroids. I made this little proof from the 80s because Lukasz complained yesterday that every time people are trying to show that you can make games in Perl 6, all they do is Pong and Space Invaders. And I'm sorry, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to show off something I created that allows you to create simple games. It's simple games so far, it may be a bit more advanced in the future. So, it started off from this, that as probably a lot of you in this room, when I was a kid and I was playing computer games, the only viable career choice I could think of was making computer games. And I never really wrote any. I was writing a lot of boring stuff, and I'm still writing some boring stuff for a living, but I never really got to writing games. But I stumbled upon this guy. He has a website, lessmilk.com, and he's also someone who wanted to make games and never did. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do a new game every week, and this way I will learn to create games. So I thought, okay, I can do that as well. It shouldn't be that hard. But just using something that already works would be so boring. I'm going to create everything I need from scratch, because that sounds like fun. If I knew how difficult that is, I probably wouldn't have started, but yeah, I did. So I created Steroids. It's called Steroids because the first game I created was Asteroids, and it sounded like fun a little bit, and it's Steroids, kind of like, they sound good in some context. Like, I'd rather be on steroids than on Rails or something. So it's a little bit modeled about Phaser.js, which is the game framework that this lessmilk guy used. So I'm sort of mimicking the API because it seemed like fun. And it's using SDL2 under the hood, so it's pretty battle-tested platform, cross-platform. Works pretty well. And the bad thing about this is that I am not a game developer, so I don't really have an idea how to do these things. I'm doing them, then I'm looking if they are good or not, if they are working good or not, and I'm making plenty of mistakes and fixing them afterwards, and there are probably still many mistakes in there that I'm not aware of, and many things that are wrong. So this is not really a stable thing. I'm going to be working on this more and more, and breaking more and more things, but hopefully it's for the best. But it's still pretty fun at this point, so it excited a lot of people last week, so I thought I'm going to talk about this. Maybe it will excite you as well. So if you're feeling adventurous to try some new things, I recommend it. It's fun to be an early adopter sometimes. And yes, this is about Perl 6 again. Most of you probably never really used Perl 6 before we came to this conference, and everybody seems to be talking about Perl 6 in here. I'm going to be doing this too, because I'm doing a lot of Perl 6 in my spare time. And one of the reasons why I picked Perl 6 for this is I like going boldly when no one has done before. And nobody has created a proper Perl 6 game framework before me, so yeah, I'm the first one. Hey! And it's also a pretty fun real-life performance test for Perl 6, because people will say, oh, because Perl 6 is slow, it's 100 times slower than Perl 5. And they will show you those graphs and say, oh, this bar is small, this is bad, this bar is big, this is good, this is slow, this is fast, and all these kind of things. You've probably seen it a lot of times. So I wanted something that will actually check, because people who promote Perl 6 will say, yeah, it's fast enough for most purposes. So I wanted to try to find a purpose that it is fast enough for, or maybe it isn't. So I wanted to figure out if it can actually run 60 frames per second games. And it turns out that it can. And when it's too slow for things, when I create a game and it's running like at half the speed it's supposed to, it's usually because I didn't bother to implement proper algorithms for more things, like collision detection or rendering. It turns out that the loop is not a suitable rendering engine, for example. So if it's working too slow, it's usually my fault and not Perl 6's fault. So it passed that performance test in my book. I also wanted to help people and help myself to ship Perl products, because a lot of people are complaining about this, that Perl people are good at creating libraries and tools for themselves, and nobody outside the Perl community knows of any things that's created with Perl. So I wanted to make it easy to create Perl products, ship them to people, so they don't have to worry about the Perl part. So the ultimate goal of this is to have a set of tools to make it easy to create games in Perl and make it easy to ship them to people. And yeah, abstract the tricky part, like things that you often get wrong. It's good if you don't have to worry about it at all. So the games are created so far. There are 3 of them. The first is Through the Window. It looks really silly, but it's actually the best game I've ever created, I think. It has a nice story behind it. It's not really visible, but it has a nice soundtrack that you have to play yourself because it's not implemented yet. I don't have like the copyright rights to ship that. But it's actually really fun. It's about when you were a child and you were driving in the backseat of a car and you looked out of the window, did you imagine a person jumping over every obstacle on the way? Some of you did, I know this. So this is what the game is about. It's about jumping over the obstacles next to the road. It's actually fun, it's cheating in a lot of places, because at this point the Steroids didn't have transparent images support, so it's all bitmaps. So the transparency in here is that all the clouds have backgrounds that are blue, every other thing has backgrounds that are blue, so it looks like they're transparent, and it is never noticeable, because when they collide, the game quits because you lost. So, this is a valuable lesson in game development, because I've heard this a lot when I was reading about this, that whenever you can cheat when creating a game, you should do that, if people won't notice. So yeah, this is cheating at its best. This is the second game I've created. It has the most boring title ever. It's called Retro Racer, and it's not fun at all, really, but I did some things properly compared to Through the Window. So this one actually has transparent things, because you would have seen that when the car was between the lanes. So I had to do that properly. But the game itself is pretty boring. And this is the last one I created. It's called Space Invaders. Go figure. But it has a lot of nice stuff in there, like animations, explosions. It's really, really fun. It's like really it's a lot of fun stuff inside. So what are the good parts about this? I'm going to tell you something about the good things that already work. So the basic structure of a game is a state machine. So we can have a state, the main state of the game, the menu state, and the jump between those. So when you press something in a menu, you jump to the game, then you want to pause, so you jump back to the menu, and there and there and there and there. So that's how we do it. Apparently, that I just copied that part from the Phaser.js framework, and it seems to work pretty well. It's entirely good idea. As you can know, this is the entire code that you need, other than just fitting the stuff inside. And you can only get away with one state. You don't need 2 or more. And funny thing is that this is the declarative code. You don't see a game loop, so you don't have to worry about keeping up with the frame rate or anything. So the things that are very easy to get wrong aren't there. So this sort of fills the first part of the goal, something that abstracts away the tricky stuff. And it does, and it works really well. You don't see the hard stuff below it. So what you can do is you can create sprites. So in the create method, which is one of the 3, one of the 2 really that you absolutely need, you create and update. Everything else is basically optional. So yeah, in create you load assets from disk, from files. It supports JPEGs, PNGs, PNGs, whatever SDO image supports. That's quite a lot of things. And you can put them on screen on specified positions. It's like the most basic stuff you can do. You can have physics for these things. So every time you put something on a screen with the sprite method, you get an object back that's sort of representing the entity in the game. So you can add some speed, move it around. There's this pretty nice event system. How does this work? Oh, there we go. So you have the when method on every of those objects. Yeah, here. So you can add some conditions in there, like when this object leaves the screen, I want to remove it, right, in the second part. Or when it collides with any of the Space Invaders, we need to do something special. I think it's a pretty nice way to do it. I don't think I've seen that anywhere else. It seems like a good idea, and it seems to work pretty well, and people like it. Collision detection currently is pretty horrible. So at the first, when I first wrote Space Invaders, I couldn't have more than 1 bullet on the screen, because my computer wouldn't keep up with checking all the collisions. Then I updated my Rakugo to a version that was like 2 weeks newer, and it works pretty well, fluently with 5 or more bullets even. But really, I should just do that properly and maybe take box2D somewhere and do this the right way instead of checking every object with every other object, which is pretty stupid. But it worked so far, so I didn't touch it yet. Animations, this is the fun part. You can load a sort of sprite sheet of images, which shows movement in different parts. So this is the little human. By the way, most of the images, besides through the window, which was visibly drawn by me, everything else is taken from opengameart.org, which is a very nice resource. I recommend it, and it's mostly by Creative Commons something license, so you can use it anywhere you want. And this is also from there. You can see tiny human in different walking stages. Yeah, I don't need to show it. You know where it is. Yeah, and you need to specify how big are the images and how many frames there are, because framework can't really deduce that easily. And then you can add animations to the player. So if your player object has a velocity, the horizontal velocity, yes, less than 0, so it's going left, you can remove the previous animation and add a new animation. So add animation for the player, frames 3 to 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, these three. The frame changes every 200 milliseconds, and true for looping. So when it's over, it starts over again and over again and over again. And Steroids takes care of that, changing those frames, so you don't have to do it yourself. Questions?
He's going left and you're showing the animation for going right.
Oh, must be a bug. I wrote this code example just for this slide, so it may be a little bit off. Yeah, it might be wrong, sorry. Text rendering. It uses SDL TTF library, so you can load TTF fonts from this in the size you want, and then add stuff to the screen. You can also cheat. The front window actually cheated as well, not only with transparent backgrounds, but the text that was there was actually a bitmap, just did it on the screen. But you don't have to do it this way these days. You can just render text in real time, however you want, any color you want, any position you want. It's pretty nice. So you may have noticed that I didn't show the drawing part yet. That's because the engine usually takes care of that for you. So it draws every object on the screen in a direction, in an order it's supposed to. And it usually works pretty well. I never needed to. You can specify your own draw method, but I never needed to do that. The sad part is that the drawing method sucks as well, because it redraws everything on every frame, which is pretty bad. If you have like more than 20 or 30 objects and you're doing the drawing 60 times per second, it gets slow pretty fast. So yeah, this is one of those things that I didn't bother to do yet, and I really should. Make the performance not horrible. And you have input processing, so you can react to events from a keyboard. There is a key press method that you can overload or specify, and then you get the key that was pressed, both as a string value, so it's an ASCII in this case, or you can use the key code or it's a scan code, I'm not sure. This is an ASCII code in this case, so it also gives you key codes for stuff that's not really easily representable with strings. It works both ways. It's a little tricky. It may sound a little weird. Why is something an int and a string at the same time? And these are different ints and strings. But yeah, you can do it in process. It's pretty magical. I'm not sure if I should be proud of doing that, but it's useful. There's also gamepad support. I wrote a gamepad with me to show you later. So yeah, you can react to button presses, to those analog sticks, movements, and all this kind of stuff. The only supported one officially supported is the Xbox controller. I did it the wrong way apparently. SDL has a game controller API that supports everything possible and does it the right way. I accidentally used the old joystick API and I wrote all the things necessary by myself, and I shouldn't have to have done that, but yeah, apparently I've had reports that it also works with other gamepads as well, so it's not that bad. And most of the time you will probably do the input processing the update method, because you don't want the player to be able to move as fast as they press the buttons. So you'll just every frame update, just like 6 times per second, you will see what's pressed. And the fun part here is that it can tell you how far have you pushed those analog sticks. So you want the player to move faster or slower depending on how far you move them. So you get the percentage, and then if the percentage is like more than 10%, so it's sort of the dead zone, then you move the player more or less depending on that. So I will show that you actually move faster when you move things farther away. Yes, so it's a time for a slide demo to prove that all this works. I'm going to show the Space Invaders game. It's here. Does it work? Yeah. I'm going to use the gamepad to show that it works. As you can see, you can shoot stuff down, blow it up. It's fun. There's no soundtrack. I should be playing soundtrack right now, but yeah, it works. You can blow stuff up.
How many lives go?
It's like 100 or something. No, it's 160 actually.
Oh.
Yep. But yeah, it works. Proved. But yeah, there's other bad things too. Not everything is shiny. I already said some bad things, but I'm going to say more now. So the other part of the goal is that, other than just having a framework that makes stuff easy, is to allow people to ship products easily. And this doesn't work at all. You can just simply install everything necessary with this one simple command. Again, but yeah, it's not that simple as it looks. And every time I create a game, I'm telling my friends, yeah, I created a game. When we tried it, and they say, yeah, what should I do? Yeah, you just download it and then install Perl 6 and everything that's necessary. You can't really bundle that with the game. It's not really possible. Even if you do that, and then it turns out that SDL2 is not installed, or SDL2 TTF is not installed, or oh, the library paths are wrong or something, it's just so horrible that I usually just say, okay, next time we see each other, I'm going to show you the game on my computer. And if they're using Windows, I don't even want to try to instruct them. Really, I have no idea how Windows works. So yeah, you can't bundle the Perl 6 compiler with Perl 6 code yet. It should be possible with regular JVM maybe. You could create a jar file that sort of contains everything, but I didn't try that yet. If you want to, then please do that and tell me how it worked. And there's some work being done by Frogs with regards to bundling the code, the bytecode actually, with the more VM. And it should be pretty small, like a couple of megabytes big at most. And I don't think it's quite there yet. It works on some cases. I didn't try really. Yeah, but we're working on that. I hope it will be there sooner than later. Yeah, if I could do that, it would be perfect. It would be both goals achieved, and I could then actually work on making this stuff good. So yeah, other bad thing besides bundling the code and distributing the code is that I didn't quite do much error handling. So most of the time when something goes wrong and you try to load the font that's not there, it will just print an error and say fault. It wasn't really a priority for me at this point, but I should do this correctly. It's a low-hanging fruit too, so it shouldn't be that hard. Yeah, I also quite skipped on memory management. So the objects that come back from the C part, so it's mostly SDL, are not garbage collected ever. Which is not a problem when you just play one round and turn the game off, because the operating system will pick that up. But if you change the game states and it loads the images every single time, it will be bad soon. So yeah, I should do that too. It's not that hard at all, so it shouldn't be that bad. So it's not quite production ready, no matter how liberal you are in your production ready definition. But there are some reasons to do that, to try it out. You can create fun stuff with it. And actually, I created the Space Invaders games last week, and it hit the front page of Hacker News Perl Weekly, and 5,000 people have seen it, so people are clearly excited that you can do such stuff, especially with Perl 6. It's quite fun to be an early adopter, and if you're looking for a way to contribute, I think it's the easiest way to do that is to find a project that's not very mature. So there's a lot of easy things to be done. The code base is small, so it's not much work to figure out how everything works. So it's a nice thing if you want to contribute to it. I'll be on a hackathon later, so if you want to join me and look how this stuff works, I'll show you. And yeah, you can achieve fame and glory, of course. Being the first person to do something and have some success in that is always well viewed up front. So if you want to learn more about this, there is a series of blog posts I did about every single game, explaining how these things work, how every single line of code works. The repo itself contains most of the code and examples. There's not that documentation in there. But you can also come to the hackathon. It will be there after lunch, after the pizza, and I will explain everything you want. So, I probably have still some time.
Tomatoes.
Yep. Questions? Yep.
Did you try to use SDL directly in Perl code?
I do that.
Not create engine in C, but...
no, actually the C layer is pretty thin, I can show you. There's like maybe 100 lines of C code.
I know.
Yeah, it's wrapping the SDL stuff so I don't have to mess with C structs directly. So it's mostly just function declarations, and the entire engine code is Perl 6. Sorry?
But this would be possible.
Yes, it would.
To have engine in
there are some SDL functions that I'm calling directly, I think. Yeah, get key name, non-joysticks. You can use this SDL without writing any C code at all. I just created a small C layer to make things easier for me, but you don't have to do that. You could just do that in pure Perl 6.
The GTK one I showed you yesterday is pure Perl 6.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
And there's also
Right.
an SDL2 module. It's like
half a year old, untouched for this time, and yeah, they get proper PLPW classes and methods to call them. And this does the bindings to the C library and does that stuff.
The reason why I did the C layer is actually I didn't want to exercise the native call module too much. I didn't want to encounter more bugs than I was supposed to, so I wanted to keep the C API as simple as possible. So I just abstracted all the tricky C things like messing with structures and function callbacks or whatever, put them in the C code, and then just make the PLPW interop with C as simple as possible.
Yeah.
So things won't break too easily. It wasn't that bad of an idea. Anyone else?
One more question.
Yeah.
You already mentioned that you don't know Windows. Actually, I tried to compile through the Windows first game on Windows several weeks ago. I failed.
Alright.
After last week, I also tried to do this again. I failed with the newest game. Maybe I will try to hackathon.
Yeah, that would be great. I can help that. Last time I tried to fix some of my code on Windows, I crashed the entire virtual machine and wasn't able to put it again. But yeah, so I avoid doing that. I'm not good at this Windows stuff.
And
Yep.
for PLPW5, we have the alien STL modules,
Mhm.
which for Unix systems, you can either choose your local installation if you have all STL libraries installed, or download the sources, and it does all the configure stuff and installs the C libraries. And on Windows, it downloads pre-compiled DLLs. You would need perhaps this for 6. So that you can depend on SDL2, for example, which depends on the LD module, which provides in some way the DLLs or shared objects. Because I know by myself, compiling these C libraries using Visual Studio, for example, takes you days. Because you have things like SDLTTF, which depends on free type, which depends on other things. Pango, which depends on stuff that it's not very portable to Windows. So there are some patches needed to make it work, or to create proper Visual Studio project files. So we have that for PLPW5, and it's not that much work to port it to PLPW6. So yeah, so you have these DLLs only in your PLPW6 installation, and you would not touch the SDL stuff from your system. So your friend that has not SDL2 installed, would have not a problem, because you will get it somehow.
More questions? 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you.